Let's talk about spooky, scary skeletons. Yeah. So there's five skeleton cards in Caverns of Ixalan. Some of them actually say skeleton on the type line. Some don't. But they aren't addressed at all in the story, and that's really sad. And
that is such a shame.
We need to take some time to appreciate them in all their glory. I think we should start with the least awesome of them, which is eaten by piranhas.
Yeah, let's ramp up to the best.
Yes. And this one makes something into a skeleton, and it's, I think, just a pretty standard, mostly limited-oriented effect. I don't know. It's fine. The art's fine. I had the question of why is it a skeleton? If they're eaten by piranhas, why aren't they just dead? I presume it's mostly because mechanically they wanted a blue effect, which is like this.
I would assume that. I think there's a bit of an implication that they're picking all the meat off the bones. But still, I'm not sure
why they're animated afterwards.
Why they become an animated... Because the skeletons are historically like animated skeletons. They're moving around, they're doing things.
Not just...
they're not just a pile of bones. And this guy's clearly doing some stuff. He's grasping at this cursed medallion.
Yeah, that's
whatever this is here.
It looks kind of like a flower, but I'm guessing that's what it's supposed to be.
I imagine it's probably something referencing Elenda the Dusk Rose, but I don't know.
Oh, I bet you're right.
What it is specifically.
I think it's serving as a Pirates of the Caribbean curse.
Yeah, maybe kind of calling back to that. He's obviously dressed in the is it the Blessed Legion? I forget their official... The Dusk Legion? Yeah, I forget their official title. Yeah. But clearly that... Also, I do kind of like that the fish here look almost elemental, or like they don't look strictly realistic. Like this almost looks to me like this could be like the spirit of the river.
You know, that's true. It could be an echo.
Yeah, it's not something that looks like a definite physical manifestation of piranhas eating this thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I kind of like that.
All right, well, let's move on to the next one because they just get cooler. Visage of Dread, a artifact which I think is pretty evocative of Indiana Jones. You steal the artifact. Oh no, something really bad happens.
Oops.
But instead of a boulder, it's a three-headed dinosaur skeleton. And if you zoom in real close, you can see that in the middle of the center head is that crystal skull.
Yeah, I actually didn't notice that until you pointed it out. I think this is a lot cooler now that I see that.
And generally, I'm sad that the story doesn't address all these skeletons, but this one is really got a self-contained story in the flavor text.
I like that. I like this tendency of using the double-faced cards to tell a little self-contained story within the cards. And this one's just particularly good. This is fun.
I love this. I love this in the remaining skeleton cards. The next of which is Corpses of the Lost, and it is not a skeleton itself, but it makes a skeleton, and every time you descend, you can bring it back to your hand and make another one. And
yeah, and I was just looking at the first line, the skeletons you control get +0 and haste. I mean, not a lot of stuff helps out skeletons. I mean, there's, aside from like the very broad tribal, you choose the tribe, XYZ happens. This is kind of cool to have a skeleton specific enchantment.
Yeah, there's either an Abzan or a... I don't know, occasionally they print enchantments or things, but eventually we'll get a critical mass.
Yeah,
really good can happen. But these guys, I first thought, oh, this is that story beat where Malcolm and Breeches go to downtown, this mining encampment, and everyone's missing, and they end up delving further and further, and they eventually find out where all the people went. And... spoilers, they have been taken over by the Myco Tyrant, and they're kind of zombified, kind of Borgified. Honestly, it's just like a really Phyrexian light. I kind of feel bad for the authors whose job it is to, take this concept of the hive mind and make it, magic. But that's what Magic's main villain has been for its entirety. And anyway, but all of the Myco Tyrant victims, or the new members of the Myco Tyrant colony,
community.
Yes, they all still have all their skin and all their flesh, and they're described in the story as mostly just their eyes get real dark.
Okay.
Or have some other, like tendrils, and they have visible signs, at least in some cases, but they're not just skeletons. So that's not what happened here, unless that was what happened early in the story, and then the art got made, and then they changed the story. But I don't know. But they're definitely pirates because it says it creates skeleton pirates.
Yes. And the token specifically shows that.
And the token gives us more information about what's going on here, because the tokens, the skeleton has these pink glyphs, runes, drawn all over it. And usually pink glowing energy in Ixalan means, what's it called?
The Cosmium.
Yeah.
Which we see on a couple other cards that you were pointing out. We have.
Yeah, so my first thought was, okay, runes, Cosmium, maybe this is like the Malamet rune stuff, because this happens in the caverns. The Malamet live in the caverns, but then I looked at all their cards, and their runes are chonky. They're very different visual style. Don't look like this at all. But then, I was looking at the other cards, and there are similar line work on the Primordial Gnar and the Basking Capybara, which are very different cards in themselves. The Capybara clearly is in the core. It's got flavor text from an old tech didact, which is like a historian. And the Primordial Gnar is pretty clearly a denizen of the caverns. So they come from different places. But I guess the unifying element is that I don't know if it has a unifying element. I presume this means that the Oltec at some point laid some curses or something, or someone descended from that civilization, because they left the core thousands of years ago and became all the surface dwellers, right? The Common Wikat, or whatever they call it. But it's a mystery. But it's an interesting mystery.
I did just realize that the skeleton pirate, when you look at the art, is wearing an outfit almost entirely composed of belts. And
belts on his head.
There's a belt on the head, belts across the chest. It looks like there's a belt buckle around the waist. Yeah. Just belts all the way down.
And same with the ones in the actual corpses of the
It's a little harder to see there, but here I like, oh wow,
there's a lot of belts involved.
It's just belts on belts on belts.
Yeah. I was looking at, Innistrad, what are the main humans? The Cathars.
The Cathars,
art recently. And I noticed they have just an absurd amount of buckles there, too. I like it.
Yeah. In general,
it's a nice theme.
I approve.
Yes. Okay. On to your favorite, maybe?
Possibly my favorite card in the set, maybe.
Introduce it.
This is Uchbenba, the Great Mistake.
But whose mistake is it?
I desperately want to know. So when I saw this card initially in the spoiler season, I was so excited about it. I think I messaged you because I was just so hyped about it. And I was eagerly anticipating finding out like what this thing's role is in the story, I just wanted to know more. Very inspiring.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that
it's not in the story.
It's not talked about.
Yeah.
We don't know. Whose mistake is this?
Yeah. I just love the art, though, because I think the art is a journey. When I look at it first, I see, and I'm going from the regular art. Both arts are cool. Yeah. But the first time I looked at the original art, I'm like, oh, that's a creepy skeleton torso coming off of this thing. Wait, those are all a bunch of other skeleton parts. And as I look more closely, I see more and more skeleton parts. There's more skulls, more torsos at the top. And then what are these elephant bone legs? Nope. They are just a metric ton of forearm bones lashed together into these giant legs.
This is peak physical performance. That's what this is.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
I love both of the arts for different reasons. I have realized about myself that I'm very partial to symmetrical art. So the alt art version, when you see the creature forward facing, you get the really nice detail of this writhing mass of skeletons.
It's got a lot more emotion.
It does. It feels
that main skull is really screaming.
It is screaming, and it really connects with the viewer. The normal art, I guess. I don't know, what do we want to call the non-normal art standard? I don't know.
Standard versus
the standard version of the card. I like how it just kind of pulls you in, like you're looking at it from the perspective. You have the stalagmite, stalactite border around it, like you're very much in the cavern. You're looking sort of kind of upward at this thing, so you get a sense of scale that like this thing is huge.
Yeah.
This is a big pile of bones.
And it sees you.
Yeah, making direct eye contact. And you kind of just draw toward that purple, pink, glowing center. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love everything about it.
Uchbenba, you may be a mistake, but we're glad you're here.
Yeah. You're the best mistake in my heart.
Yes. All right, the last one, and maybe the greatest, though Uchbenba is definitely up there.
Hard to follow that, yeah.
The throne of the Grim Captain. We're still dealing with mashed up skeletons into one big monstrous skeleton. So
you know what's better than one skeleton?
A bunch of skeletons?
All the skeletons.
All of them. Yes. So, yeah, the throne of the Grim Captain is...
I remember that.
Oh, yeah. We're looking at both
the arts. Yeah, this is... If you want to find a screen cap so that everyone can make fun of me, when I first saw this, I immediately was like, oh, yeah, this is Goldie Roger's execution from One Piece. If you know what that looks like, you can see how tenuous of a string that is that I drew between those two moments. And I think that says a lot more about me than this.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm just really...
You came second in a One Piece draft, yes?
I did, actually! I was undefeated until the final match.
You're going to be
narrowly, just narrowly missed it. So close. But yeah, I'm just really fixated on that.
Yeah.
But I really like this one, too. I like the...
It's so cool.
The backside of the Grim Captain, the Skeleton Spirit Pirate. Love how this comes together with the three-headed... forearms. It kind of looks like dinosaur jaws on the bottom half.
I think that is. I mean, you exile 4 things to craft it, and one of them is a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Dinosaur, merfolk, pirate, and vampire. So that's it.
Yeah,
it's like
that.
It's like a rocket skirt.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's beautiful.
It is. Yeah, it's cool. The alt art is also beautiful, but in a more traditional way. It's like, hey, those are some cool skeletons.
Yeah, these guys look really cool. I like the guy with the beard. I think that's interesting that he's held on to that element.
Yep. In both incarnations.
Yeah, and I actually just put something together. Yeah, that we have all of the tribes here represented in skeletal form. We have the pirates, merfolk, vampires, and dinosaurs, and I like how they represented that because I have on occasion. This is kind of hard to find sometimes, but occasionally artists will share some of the prompts they were given for magic art, like the directives, and usually there's a mood that's mentioned. There are specific things that they might want to see, but sometimes it's a little bit vague, and they get these directives, and then there's a back and forth process. So I can imagine it would be, to some extent, I mean, the dinosaur, pick your favorite dinosaur and do that skeleton. But for the pirate, merfolk, and vampire, these humanoid races, the challenge of trying to differentiate them as skeletons... I mean, obviously we had to rely on some costuming, but but I like the direction that they went with that here.
Yeah, they pulled it off. You can definitely tell which one is which.
It's distinctive.
Which is something. Yeah. And besides the aesthetic of this card, which is just phenomenal, I love to play this card. I made a deck for the play queue. I don't think it's good enough to put in ranked. Maybe I'm just wrong about that. I've heard it's also totally playable in limited, which I would not have assumed, but some actual good.
I wouldn't have thought that either.
Pulled it off apparently.
But,
but my experience of creating that deck was, oh yeah, I like this huge text box that does all these cool things. Then I kind of forgot what most of it did. I was focused on putting the deck together. When I finally get the thing flipped for the first time, I thought it flew, and I was a little disappointed because look at that art. It looks like it flies.
This is a topic we need to come back to on another video, because I have thouts about that specific thing. It definitely looks like it flies. But Menace, Trample, Lifelink, Hexproof?
Yeah. It's it's impossible to interact with. I have had most of the opponents who have encountered it seem to really mouse over it a lot, hesitate for a minute. So,
there's that moment of thinking like,
But so that first time, I'm like, okay, well, I can attack with it because it's got Menace, and I'm going to be fine. So I do. And then I see the rest of the text box again and am reminded, oh yeah, this does more stuff. And then my opponent has to sacrifice an on-land permanent, and then I get to pick one of the things I crafted and put it on the battlefield attacking, and that is so cool.
I'm reading this again in the each opponent bit and regretting that we did not get to play this in our two-headed giant matches.
I didn't notice the each opponent thing either. Great. Yeah. Huh.
Missed opportunity.
This thing just gets better and better. It's really beautiful. So that's why this one is, I think, my favorite over Uchbenba. I hope you can, if not agree, respect that.